ECOWAS, under foreign influence, betrayed its founding principles and became a threat to its member states and their populations. The organization notably failed to assist these states in their existential fight against terrorism and insecurity. Worse, when these states decided to take their destiny into their own hands, ECOWAS allegedly adopted an irrational and unacceptable stance by imposing sanctions that were illegal, illegitimate, inhumane, and irresponsible.
ECOWAS, or the Economic Community of West African States, became a Western puppet, putting sanctions on Niger. It thought it could do anything it wanted without being punished or questioned. However, just recently, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger gave a shock to the ECOWAS, announcing to quit the alliance. This changed everything, but ECOWAS tried to hide what it had lost, saying that these countries would face difficulties without ECOWAS.
The exit from ECOWAS would be much worse than the sanctions in terms of the hardship that it would place the citizens of these three countries. So we don't wish it upon them.
Well, now we know the reality, as reports have suggested. ECOWAS will face an annual loss of over $74 million without these countries. This is a huge dent in ECOWAS and a type of punishment, showing that if it continued to go against its own principles and blackmail African nations, it would ultimately collapse. But how has ECOWAS faced such a massive loss, and how will it increase with every passing year? Let's find out. A major upset happened for the ECOWAS. Earlier, it was trying to punish Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. However, things became upside down and the strategy backfired. The Burkina Faso news agency revealed that ECOWAS is estimated to lose nearly $74 million annually due to the departure of these three nations, with Burkina Faso's Minister of Economy and Finance, Abubakar Nassanabo, providing the figures. Nassanabo indicated that ECOWAS could lose at least 45 billion CFA francs annually in union levies. The minister emphasized that a decrease in the number of association members inevitably leads to financial losses. He also highlighted that the majority of ECOWAS natural resources are concentrated in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, collectively forming the Alliance of Sahel States. Concerning foreign trade, Nassanabo suggested that Burkina Faso's departure from ECOWAS would have minimal impact due to its limited trade relations with other bloc members. Strained relations between AS countries and ECOWAS have persisted since military takeovers occurred in Mali in 2020, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023. In response, ECOWAS imposed severe sanctions on Niger and threatened military intervention to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. The departure of these Alliance of Sahel States members from ECOWAS was hailed by Burkinabe Prime Minister Apollinaire Joachim Kielem de Tambela as a historic decision that aligns with the desires of the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to attain complete sovereignty. Additionally, the departure is expected to diminish ECOWAS's geographic reach, reduce its population coverage, and impact its overall collective GDP. But is it true that the losses were the reason ECOWAS earlier begged these countries not to quit? The West African regional bloc ECOWAS earlier urged the military-led governments of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali to reconsider their decision to withdraw from the political and economic alliance, stating that such a move would impose hardships on their citizens. However, these three countries have not changed their plan. This departure presents an additional challenge to ECOWAS, which has struggled to keep African countries under Western influence. ECOWAS Commission President Omar Touré criticized the junta's decision as hasty and accused them of not following the proper withdrawal procedures outlined in the bloc's rules. He did not specify which withdrawal conditions had been disregarded. According to ECOWAS regulations, member states seeking to withdraw must provide a written one-year notice. However, the military leaders announced their intention to leave without delay, arguing that they did not feel bound by the terms of the treaty. This decision increases the likelihood of a complicated disentanglement from the region's trade and services valued at nearly 150 billion annually. It's another shock for ECOWAS. But why do Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger want to punish ECOWAS greatly? The three countries have put forward three main justifications. Firstly, they condemn what they perceive as illegal, illegitimate, inhumane, and irresponsible sanctions imposed on them for disrupting their democracies. Secondly, they highlight ECOWAS's failure to support them in their existential struggle against terrorism and insecurity. Additionally, the military leaders argue that ECOWAS has deviated from the foundational principles of the organization and is now under the influence of foreign powers. Earlier, ECOWAS explicitly stated that it would not cooperate with the regimes. Its statements reflect a firm stance aimed at deterring military coups in other countries within the bloc. However, once these countries decided to leave the alliance, ECOWAS begged them not to leave. Moreover, ECOWAS failed in earlier decided objectives in a true sense. The three countries said that ECOWAS failed to offer assistance against jihadist threats, imposed illegal sanctions causing harm to the population, and was seen as being influenced by foreign governments. These reasons appear to be effective, as populations are mobilized and armed to combat jihadist forces. Military leaders are adopting the persona of Thomas Sankara, the respected former president of Burkina Faso, known for his resistance against corrupt elites and French dominance, as well as his principles, modesty, and concern for ordinary Burkinabe citizens. This narrative conveniently aligns with the agendas of both China and Russia, asserting that current global institutions primarily serve to protect Western interests. They argue that adherence to Western values denies nations the right to develop independently, suggesting that only China and Russia truly champion the interests of the global South. Russia's actions support its rhetoric, with approximately 1,000 troops stationed in Mali, now under state control, and rebranded as the Africa Corps. The first 100 troops have arrived in Burkina Faso, with plans for more. Other troops are being deployed to Niger, ostensibly for counter-terrorism operations, but primarily to safeguard the regime against internal threats. But what more losses does ECOWAS have to endure?
I think ECOWAS could survive. It's not too late to make things right. ECOWAS realizes that all of the measures and the sanctions it enacted were inappropriate. And it's trying to solve this through diplomacy. And it should try to solve this through diplomacy.
The primary impact will be on trade and economic development. ECOWAS serves mainly as an economic community, and the departure of any member will undoubtedly impact trade and economic progress. Collectively, the three countries contribute 8% to the $761 billion ECOWAS gross domestic product. In 2022, the total trade volume from the ECOWAS region was $277.22 billion. There is concern that the exit of these countries could disrupt the flow of goods and services within the bloc. Additionally, leaving the bloc could lead to other significant outcomes like economic downturns. Moreover, this economic downturn could prompt a significant migration of citizens to other ECOWAS countries, posing an extra threat to the bloc's stability. Concerns arise that the three countries may establish bilateral relationships with nations that could be detrimental to other ECOWAS members. For instance, there are worries about Niger aligning with Russia after severing ties with France. While the lack of security support from ECOWAS was cited as one reason for exiting, a total collapse of existing security infrastructure would impact not only the three countries, but also other relatively stable states such as Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, and Benin. However, the three countries are more focused on punishing the ECOWAS countries. Political analyst Gilles Yabi echoed sentiments, highlighting that the harsh economic sanctions and the prospect of military intervention in Niger have backfired, leading to a decline in ECOWAS popularity among civilians and enabling the military regimes to opt for withdrawal. The military regimes have exploited public dissatisfaction with ECOWAS, amplifying accusations that the regional bloc is subservient to foreign powers, particularly France, which backed economic and political sanctions. They rebuke ECOWAS for failing to adequately support the fight against terrorism, as militant violence in the region has nearly quadrupled over the past 4 years. All this collectively exposes ECOWAS, affecting its reputation. Those who earlier did not know about the reality of ECOWAS today know what its purpose is. Therefore, there are concerns within ECOWAS that more countries could leave the alliance. That's why we are seeing ECOWAS still trying its best to win back the three countries. Perhaps the upcoming year presents an opportunity for substantive dialogue between the three military juntas and ECOWAS, aimed at recalibrating expectations for an inclusive political process. Niger plans to hold national consultations regarding its transition following a deadlock with ECOWAS, which suggested an 18-month period. Mali is initiating an inter-Malian dialogue after unilaterally terminating a 2015 peace agreement with Tuareg rebels in the north, potentially delaying elections initially scheduled for February. Burkina Faso intends to amend its constitution after Captain Ibrahim Traoré ruled out elections due to insecurity. As for now, ECOWAS must reclaim its diminishing political influence, having faced rapid instability and questions about the legitimacy of some member states' leaders over the past half-decade. This stands in contrast to its peak from 1993 to 2017, when it effectively intervened in civil wars in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Côte d'Ivoire, and facilitated a peaceful transition in the Gambia, where Yahya Jammeh initially resisted handing over power to Adama Barrow. However, after it became a puppet for the West, it lost its credibility. While Mauritania's departure from the bloc over 2 decades ago in protest of its economic sovereignty did not hinder ECOWAS's progress, the impending exit of the Sahel nations has heightened tensions and the struggle to quell political unrest in the region. But how will each of the leaving countries be affected? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Leaving ECOWAS brings losses to both parties, which include the 3 leaving countries and ECOWAS as a whole. Even though ECOWAS will lose more, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali will still feel the brunt. Approximately 70 million citizens from the 3 Sahel countries, who have long benefited from free movement, trade, and business opportunities within the sub-region, now face an increasingly uncertain future. Sanctions imposed in response to the coups have significantly restricted economic and social privileges, fueling public resentment towards ECOWAS. The cost of essential goods has surged, with rice, cooking oil, and fuel prices soaring by over 50% since August last year. Nearly half of Niger's 25 million people are now at risk of food insecurity, according to the World Food Programme. The primary impact on these countries will be the movement of people, goods, and services. Within ECOWAS, members benefit from unrestricted movement of citizens across the bloc. Citizens of ECOWAS countries can live and work in any member state. For instance, there are more than 5 million citizens from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, residing and working in Côte d'Ivoire alone. Ghana, Togo, and the Republic of Benin also host significant populations of Nigerian citizens. Citizens from all 3 landlocked countries would lose the freedom to travel to other ECOWAS states after the exit. Niger, in particular, shares a border of over 1,600 kilometers with 7 states in Nigeria, with 80% of its trade conducted with Nigeria. The sanctions ECOWAS imposed on Niger are already affecting the country's citizens. If Nigeria decides to enforce border controls, the hardship is likely to worsen after the departure. Additionally, depending on ECOWAS's future engagement with these countries, there could be restrictions on goods and services, further impacting their economies. Mali is particularly dependent on imports from ECOWAS, which accounted for 34.9% of Mali's merchandise imports in 2022. Therefore, Mali's 2024 average inflation forecast is upwards of 5.5%, compared to the previous expectation of 1.5%. S&P Ratings notes that Burkina Faso depends on the ports of Cotonou in Benin and Lomé in Togo for its international trade, putting it in a difficult position after the ECOWAS exit. While some trade from all 3 states can be redirected via the coastal state of Guinea, the loss of access to ECOWAS's large single market and the freedom of movement that membership of the bloc entails will have dire consequences for the 3 economies. Furthermore, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have yet to show any inclination to withdraw from the CFA franc, the currency pegged to the euro and utilized by these nations along with 5 other members of the West African Economic and Monetary Union, an entity distinct from ECOWAS. However, reports from local media in November suggested that finance ministers from these three countries issued a joint statement recommending that the matter of an economic and monetary union be referred to a committee of experts. This proposal includes establishing a joint stabilization fund and regional investment bank, among other measures. However, there are concerns that exiting ECOWAS would result in inflationary pressures in all three countries, leading to higher impairment charges and decreased profitability for local banking subsidiaries. However, the impact is unlikely to be significant for regional banks due to the relatively small size of these three economies compared to the rest of the region. So, what will happen to the ECOWAS? Will it collapse? As the security crisis in the Sahel worsens, tensions within ECOWAS, especially among its French-speaking members, have escalated. The Sahel countries, grappling with increasing violence, have witnessed rising disillusionment with perceived ineffective democracies, leading to military coups in Mali in 2020 and Burkina Faso in 2022, both widely supported by the populace. Concurrently, discontent with France and the West has grown, partly due to their military presence failing to improve security. During such conditions, ECOWAS gets exposed as a body securing French and Western interests. This has disillusioned the people and promoted the feelings of leaving ECOWAS altogether. Now, little by little, we are seeing events that are weakening ECOWAS in one way or the other. Because African countries can no longer rely blindly on ECOWAS, the member countries are thinking of protecting themselves in any way possible. The feeling of this insecurity is sufficient to cause cracks in ECOWAS that would ultimately result in the disintegration of the alliance.
It's true that Guinea could be tempted, but for me, Guinea isn't the biggest risk. Togo is. Togo has never had a change of political power. Togo has been serving as a link between ECOWAS and the alliance of Sahel states. When they get together for discussions, it's in Togo. Togo is currently revising its constitution, possibly to allow the government to remain in power. For me, it's Togo that is more concerning than the military regime in Guinea. It's true that with everything going on, we don't know the potential consequences on ECOWAS more widely, or for relations between the different countries. But in reality, it looks like the beginning of the collapse of the regional bloc.
The establishment of AES, the Alliance of Sahel States, in September 2023 marked Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger's alignment as a collective entity, distancing themselves from the G5 international force established by France to combat Sahelian Islamists. This move, applauded by their populations, underscores the backing of their military governments. The Sahelians, embracing a pan-African identity, view their nations as finally asserting true sovereignty after over 60 years of independence, often regarding the coastals, such as Ivory Coast, Senegal, Togo, and Benin, as dependent on and subservient to France. Without a factual cost-benefit analysis, it's challenging to predict the consequences of the Sahel countries leaving ECOWAS. Theoretically, remaining ECOWAS members could impose import taxes and visa requirements for AES citizens. Still, they may opt not to do so, similar to continuing electricity provision to Niger despite ECOWAS sanctions. Whatever unfolds will significantly impact the 70 million inhabitants of the AES, who are already among the world's poorest and most vulnerable. The Sahel region now witnesses more deaths from terrorism than South Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa combined. While it's understandable that Sahelians seek a new direction to navigate their dire circumstances, the question remains: how can the will of the people be expressed in an environment devoid of elections, with political parties banned and dissenters considered unpatriotic and subjected to arbitrary detention? But one thing is certain: ECOWAS is losing. The exit of these three landlocked Sahelian nations from ECOWAS poses a significant risk of worsening trade disruptions, impeding mobility, undermining democratic governance, and weakening Nigeria's position as a regional leader. To address this urgent issue, regional leaders must confront some challenges. Firstly, the resurgence of military rule across West Africa indicates a breakdown in democratic governance, compounded by widespread corruption and manipulation of elections by authoritarian regimes. These issues are further complicated by the lasting effects of colonialism and ongoing interference by foreign powers driven by self-interest. Secondly, the integration of West Africa has been hindered by former colonial powers, particularly France, which maintains significant influence through its control of Francophone economic institutions and the CFA franc currency. Despite the expulsion of French troops from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso amid anti-French protests by 2023, the presence of US troops adds layers of complexity. While ECOWAS was originally established to promote economic integration and development rather than address security threats or safeguard democratic institutions, it has evolved into a peacekeeping force. However, intra-regional trade has been hampered by member states' failure to diversify their predominantly monocrop economies. Therefore, instead of becoming an instrument for the Western countries to suppress African countries, ECOWAS has to recall the reason it was established. The fourth challenge arises from elected leaders disregarding ECOWAS rules, leading to what civil society groups describe as civilian coups. This has allowed military leaders in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea to position themselves as the only alternative to unpopular French-backed regimes. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu's threat to remove Niger's junta has heightened tensions and contributed to the withdrawal of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso from the bloc. But how will this impact the West African region as a whole? The exit of Mali, Niger Republic, and Burkina Faso from the economic community of West African states signifies a significant change in the regional dynamics of West Africa. This development could have several implications for the region. Firstly, it may disrupt existing trade agreements and impede economic integration efforts, potentially leading to trade barriers and tariffs that could harm businesses and economic growth. Additionally, it may indicate underlying political instability or dissatisfaction with ECOWAS leadership and policies, reflecting a lack of confidence in the organization's ability to address regional challenges effectively, such as security threats and terrorism. Furthermore, the withdrawal could weaken collective security mechanisms and diminish the region's capacity to respond to security threats, including terrorism and insurgency. For example, Niger's participation in the multinational joint task force combating the Boko Haram insurgency in the Lake Chad region may be jeopardized. Moreover, the departure of member states undermines efforts to promote regional integration and cooperation across various fields, hindering progress towards shared regional goals. It may strain diplomatic relations between the withdrawing countries and other ECOWAS members, potentially impacting broader regional diplomacy and cooperation. In conclusion, ECOWAS should now try to learn a lesson from what happened. Before the Nigerian president controlled its chair, ECOWAS was less direct and aggressive in going against African countries on the Western Master's orders. However, Bola Tinubu changed that. It's not known how, but he convinced himself and the member ECOWAS countries into thinking that attacking Niger and putting the worst sanctions on junta-led countries is good for democracy and human rights. He tried going beyond his capacity to please his Western masters, and this has backfired. Now, ECOWAS member countries know the ECOWAS chair's true intentions, and chances are Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso will get more countries to leave the bloc. Therefore, an annual loss of 74 million is just the start of many shocks coming toward ECOWAS. What do you think? Should ECOWAS return on track and leave the ambitious plans to be a Western puppet? Isn't it true that when the Nigerian president became ECOWAS chair, he made the alliance pro-Western and insensitive to Africa? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on whether Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger should punish ECOWAS by encouraging more members to exit. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.